In a book called The Selfish Gene, the biologist Richard Dawkins shares the story of the evolution of life, from what he called the primordial soup to the present day. He begins by telling how, with the addition of gases, chemical compounds, and the like, eventually, somehow, some compounds began to come together and even create what we call life. Some of them were large, others were small, and some were medium-sized. But they all had the same goal: to continue gathering more components, whether phosphorus, potassium, calcium, or so on, with the aim of maintaining their form in their world, given what is called the entropy, which is the natural decay of all things, from a more denser and more together state to another less dense and more separate state. As a result, there were only two types of individuals left: the large ones that could store a lot of nutrients, and the small ones that were faster, more agile, and could catch more nutrients. The problem was that the large ones didn't have much mobility, and so they couldn't catch as many nutrients on their own, while the small ones, despite being fast, couldn't store as many nutrients. Over time, these two types of individuals ended up forming a pact. The big ones said, "You can take the nutrients, and I'll stay here and take care of them for us." And so it went. The theory that Richard Dawkins gives is that this would have been the beginning of the differentiation of the sexes, the female being the one that carried the nutrients, and the male the one that sold them. Given the millions and millions of years of evolution, this ended up also becoming the differentiation between gametes, with female gametes, the eggs, for example, being those that stay there still, and sperm being those that, in addition to fighting among themselves, still need to do their best to reach the egg, showing, so to speak, that it carries the best genes, the best gifts, the best nutrients, so to speak. And you do this a quintillion more times, and you have what we call evolution. One of the hypotheses that helps to affirm this is the so-called variability hypothesis, which says that no matter what measurement you are doing, men have a tendency to be at the extremes of whatever it is. For example, when you take the people who are the most intelligent, 7 out of 10 of those people, for example, tend to be men. And you might ask yourself, well, are there more intelligent men than women? The answer would be, in that case, that yes, there are. But when you look at the other end of the graph, you realize that 7 out of 10 of those people with lower levels of intelligence or below average intelligence are also men. You could also say that the least intelligent people on average, are also male. And all of this ends up leading to the idea that it is preferable for men to have these differentiations, these genetic mutations or this variability, because eventually he would perhaps be able to develop some good ability. After all, it was Nietzsche, somewhere in the Beyond Good and Evil, who said that whether you are a leader leading people to war or a coward running away from dangers, on either side you are outside the group, which is a very powerful idea, and I think it says a lot about what we are saying here. There are also many current discussions that also value changes in the structure and social order. I'm not saying just about men being providers, but something simpler like men paying for dinners, for example. But if you consider that this simply contradicts the 500 million years of evolution that we have, perhaps you might find that these comments are the true social constructs. And this is not just in the Western view, it is also widespread in the East. For example, in Japanese mythology, Izanagi and Izanami are the two creator gods, responsible for the formation of the Japanese archipelago, and the first kami, the deities. According to the Kojiki, the oldest book on Japanese mythology, Izanagi is the male deity, and his name literally means the one who invites, while the female deity Izanami would be the one who is invited. However, when it came time to make another lineage of gods, Izanami, the female deity, was the one who made the first move and greet Izanagi, inviting him to bed, so to speak. As a result of this, the first offspring of children they had were all born deformed and ended up being abandoned. Realizing their mistake, they performed another ritual, this time with Izanagi taking the initiative, leading to them creating healthy children as a result. But at the same time, it is not just to say that men should do this intentionally to get women. In fact, it is said in the Bhagavad Gita, it is not just because you do something that you are entitled to receive something from what you are doing. What I'm saying here, and this is perhaps more of a question, is that what happens to human beings when we go against these millions of years of evolution? Perhaps the various videos about the man's crisis, depression, and perhaps even the current political divisions are not precisely a reflection of this. After all, if you have, as Freud say, the eros or the life drive, and you don't fulfill that drive, that is, you can't dissipate that psychic energy, or even, as he also says, the libido outwards, this same drive, the same instinct or impulse that would bring you the things you desire, that would make you realize these life issues to fulfill your necessities, that is, these ideas of seeking, of providing, of going after something outside of your comfort zone and returning this and sharing with not only a woman or a wife, but your society as a whole. To what extent does the lack of expressing of this life drive end up returning to the subject itself and becoming what Freud himself also calls the thanatos, or death drive? In other words, since in today's society we men go against what is instilled within us in a certain way, how much harm do we end up doing to ourselves because of this? We could add even more. Freud also said, as does the Canadian psychologist Jordan Peterson, that when people do not find what they desire in life, in physical and concrete reality, the same people, or us in this case, end up turning to fantasy or to fiction, seeking to fulfill or dissipate the same desires, the same instincts, the same drives that are so deeply rooted within us in video games, for example, or even movies. So by not fulfilling these desires in the physical world, we end up turning not only to movies but video games to compensate these impulses. And who knows, maybe even for girls on OnlyFans, girls who in a certain way also live this archetype of being supported by a man, and of men supporting or delivering and sharing something with these women as well. But in this case, not only one man, but many. Well, you might not believe this, but I do believe that one of the most famous romantic novels can help us to dissect this out. In the next video, I'll try to analyze this film, not the book Pride and Prejudice, so I can articulate these ideas better.